A terrorist was placed in a special fluid and woke up 250 years later in a new body. In the 27th century, human consciousness is stored on stacked special devices that can be transferred into new bodies after the old one dies. At the request of one of the world's wealthiest individuals, the stack of a rebel who fought against the global government is placed in a new body. He wakes up 250 years after his previous body was destroyed. Now, he must investigate an attempt on the life of the billionaire who revived him while also trying to complete a mission he started 2 centuries ago. Takeshi Kovacs, a ruthless mercenary, joins a rebellion against the global government, known as the Protectorate. The rebellion is led by a terrorist named Quellchrist Falconer. The mercenaries, known as the Envoys, are defeated, and Takeshi is the last surviving warrior, hunted by the authorities. One day, the government tracks down Takeshi. Soldiers prepare to storm the apartment where Takeshi and his mercenary girlfriend are spending the night. Thanks to his unusual abilities, Takeshi senses the soldiers' presence through the wall, almost seeing their outlines. But before he can act, the soldiers blow up the wall and break in. Takeshi and his partner manage to grab their weapons and take down a few soldiers, but they come under heavy fire. Takeshi dodges bullets and tries to fight the soldiers hand to hand, but the Protectorate squad is too strong. An officer accuses him of espionage, terrorism, and treason, then shoots his partner in the head before the squad guns down Takeshi as well. "250 years later, Takeshi's consciousness is transferred to a new body. As he awakens, he's tormented by flashbacks of his last moments in the previous body. Disoriented, he attacks the specialists who revived him. They inform the enraged Takeshi that he spent 2.5 centuries in cryostasis at Alcatraz prison on Earth and now needs to adjust to his new body. Later, at a briefing, Takeshi and other criminals are told that they have served their sentences and have been restored using available bodies. However, they may experience hallucinations and memory loss, which is entirely normal. A woman explains that memory stacks are implanted in all Protectorate citizens when they reach 1 year old, storing all the data of a person's digitized consciousness. This consciousness can be transferred to any stack and loaded into any body across all known worlds. But while bodies can be easily replaced, a destroyed stack cannot be restored, so they should avoid trauma to the base of the skull or headshots from energy weapons.
There's no coming back from real death.
The guards escort Takeshi to the warden, who informs him that his stack has been loaded into a body equipped with military neurochemistry and combat muscle memory, all at the request of a man named Lawrence Bancroft. Bancroft has rented Takeshi and essentially owns him. Takeshi is far from pleased by this news, but the warden warns that refusing the terms of his revival will result in the cancellation of his early release and his immediate return to prison, where he will continue serving his endless sentence in digital form. In the waiting room, other newly released prisoners are reuniting with their families. A 7-year-old girl is placed in the body of an older woman, shocking her parents. They demand a proper body for their daughter, who died in a car accident, but are told that no better bodies were available for free. At the same time, Takeshi meets Lieutenant Kristen Ortega, who is supposed to escort him to Bancroft's estate. As he watches the scene in confusion, Kristen explains that under the restitution law for victims, the state has the right to transfer a person's consciousness into any available body.
Prisons lease out the goods leaves for profit.
Very humane.
As they step outside, Takeshi and Kristen witness a protest. Activists are demanding fair trials for criminals and the abolition of the resurrection practice. They then head to Bancroft's estate in a flying limousine, and along the way, Takeshi takes in the futuristic world that's new to him. Kristen explains that Bancroft belongs to the Meths, a class of the wealthiest people in the world whose consciousness is backed up on a reserve device, ensuring that even the destruction of their main stack won't result in their permanent death. The Meths are named after Methuselah, the biblical patriarch who lived 969 years. Bancroft himself is over 360 years old. Soon, they ascend above the clouds. Kristen mentions that all Meths prefer to build their homes high above, where they won't be distracted by ordinary people. Kristen also tries to pry into Takeshi's past life and home planet, but he refuses to give her any specific answers. Finally, they arrive at Bancroft's estate. Kristen reveals that she isn't Bancroft's chauffeur but a security officer, and that her questions weren't just out of curiosity. Takeshi gives her his name, and Kristen runs it through her database. Puzzled, she tells him that he can't be who he claims to be because all the envoys were wiped out. But just then, they are interrupted by Bancroft's security guards and his wife, Miriam. Miriam accuses Kristen of trespassing on their property and stealing their limousine, as Takeshi was supposed to be brought by Isaac, their son. At that moment, a police car lands nearby, and Isaac emerges, having been detained for drunk driving, which allowed Kristen to seize his vehicle. Miriam calls this police harassment, and Kristen leaves Takeshi alone with her.
Yeah, there's your kid, there's your car, and there's your new pet terrorist.
Miriam's demeanor instantly shifts to friendly as she welcomes Takeshi to their estate. Sundown. She leads him through a luxurious home that resembles a museum, filled with various artifacts from the past. Finally, Takeshi is brought to Lawrence Bancroft's study. Bancroft starts the conversation by reminiscing about the Envoy Rebellion, which, apart from him and Takeshi, almost no one else remembers anymore. Bancroft expresses admiration for Takeshi's training under Quellcrist and marvels at the incredible power the envoys possessed. He then hands Takeshi a notebook that once belonged to Quellcrist, which he purchased at an auction. Takeshi examines it with confusion, then pointedly remarks that unlike the notebook, he cannot be bought. Takeshi asserts that he never asked to be awakened or released, demanding to know what exactly is expected of him. Bancroft presents him with a document granting full presidential pardon from the Protectorate and explains that if Takeshi agrees to his terms, his sentence will be reduced to time served. In addition, he would receive a salary of 50 million, and after completing the task, he could choose any body he desires. To start his new life, Takeshi must solve the mystery of who killed Bancroft and destroyed his stack. Bancroft points to a bloodstain on the wall, explaining that Miriam found him headless, the result of an energy weapon blast. What's more, the unique blaster used in the attack is stored in Bancroft's own safe, to which only he and Miriam have access. Previous investigations have led nowhere, as most believed either Bancroft took his own life or his wife shot him. Takeshi questions that if Bancroft's stack was preserved, he should remember what happened, and if it wasn't, then he shouldn't be alive at all. Bancroft explains the existence of a remote backup of his digitized consciousness. Takeshi admits he's heard of it, but has never encountered anyone wealthy enough to afford such a thing. Bancroft uses a telescope to show Takeshi his own military-grade satellite, where his stack automatically uploads data every 48 hours.
Whoever killed me pulled the trigger 10 minutes before my backup went through.
It turns out that all of Bancroft's memories from the last 48 hours vanished, and immediately after his death, there was an attack on the satellite transmission. Clearly, someone is determined to eliminate Bancroft for good, and Takeshi must figure out who and why. Takeshi leans towards the idea that Bancroft might have orchestrated the whole thing himself, but Bancroft insists that he's not the type to sacrifice his own life. He adds that if he had indeed intended to take his own life, he would have followed through completely, ensuring he wouldn't be revived. After listening to Bancroft, Takeshi declares that he doesn't care about the money or the pardon. He's perfectly content with spending eternity in cryostasis, just as he did for the last 250 years. Before Takeshi leaves, Bancroft offers him a chance to enjoy himself, to remember what it feels like to be alive, and asks for a final decision the next day. He also hands over Quellcrist's notebook to Takeshi. Meanwhile, at the police station, Kristen is trying to figure out who Takeshi really is and why Bancroft went to the trouble of bringing him back. The envoys are not just ordinary soldiers, they are ready to jump into battle on any planet and in any body, which makes Takeshi potentially dangerous. Takeshi heads into the city and indulges in various illegal substances. Soon, Kristen finds him and suggests they grab a drink together. Initially, he refuses, but just as Kristen is about to leave, he changes his mind and agrees to talk. In a local bar, Kristen continues to press Takeshi about his connection to Bancroft. Using his envoy intuition, Takeshi quickly deduces that Kristen was the one who previously worked on Bancroft's case. She admits that Bancroft nearly ruined her career, even though she did everything she could to find the perpetrator. However, every investigation concluded that Bancroft took his own life, and the case was eventually closed. Kristen also shares that, around the same time as Bancroft's case, she was assigned to investigate the death of a young neo-Catholic girl who was dumped into the bay. Kristen finds it suspicious that both events occurred simultaneously and believes the girl's case is more significant. But Takeshi thinks someone was indeed involved in Bancroft's strange death, though he has no intention of getting involved. He bids Kristen farewell, mentioning that he'll be staying at the Raven, a hotel run by an AI modeled after Edgar Allan Poe. Kristen warns him that no one stays in those hotels anymore and that the AI hosts can be dangerous, but Takeshi brushes off her concerns. Upon arriving at the Raven, Takeshi orders the most expensive room with the best entertainment and women. Suddenly, he's surrounded by armed thugs. The AI, Poe, hints that he can assist and offers to unlock the guest amenities with a tap on the screen. Takeshi catches on to this and initially doesn't resist the thugs. He begins distracting and confusing them, and then finally taps the screen. At the hotel, a specialized combat system activates, gunning down the thugs. Poe, the AI, finishes off a few with a shotgun. Takeshi attempts to interrogate the gang leader, but before he can get any information, the leader is killed. Soon after, the police arrive at the hotel, led by Kristen. Together with her partner, they discover that the body of the gang leader is registered to Dmitry Kadmin, a Russian hitman also known as Dmitry the Twin. Kadmin is infamous for making illegal copies of his stack and uploading them into counterfeit bodies, a crime that could lead to his true death. However, the police are still trying to locate all the copies and the original stack. Kristen intends to load the stack from this version of Kadmin to interrogate him, but she finds it damaged. She blames the AI for this, but Poe defends himself, stating he was merely protecting his first guest in years. After leaving the hotel, Takeshi contemplates ending his life instead of waiting to be frozen again. In a hallucination, he sees Quellcrist in an alleyway. She urges him not to give up, but Takeshi doesn't want to continue living and fighting without her. Despite his reluctance, Quellcrist insists that the Bancroft case is more important than it seems and that it could help him complete his personal mission in this world. Reluctantly, Takeshi heeds Quellcrist's call and immediately heads to Bancroft, announcing that he's ready to take on the case. Returning to the Raven, Takeshi falls asleep but is plagued by nightmares of his war-torn past. In the morning, Poe brings Umu Prescott, Bancroft's lawyer, to see him. Mistaking her for a call girl, Takeshi, completely naked, tries to kick her out. Meanwhile, Kristen is getting ready for work and instructs her AI assistant, Falcon, to track Takeshi's movements secretly, as she had previously planted a bug on him. Later, Takeshi and Prescott head to the executive department of Psychosec, a company that manufactures additional bodies for elite clients. While waiting for Director Nyman, Takeshi demands all of Bancroft's personal and business contacts. Prescott retorts that people in Bancroft's circle are too powerful to be interrogated, accusing Takeshi of incompetence.
So you go tell your boss you decided it's too socially awkward for me to save his life. I'm sure he'll understand.
Nyman soon arrives and explains the work of his corporation. He claims that their main business is creating clones, which cost more than most people earn in a lifetime, allowing meths to live practically forever. They then move to the Bancroft's clone storage. Takeshi wants to find out who attempted to hack Bancroft's backup right after the assassination attempt and asks for the records of his last download. Prescott suggests that it might have been scammers who steal fragments of meth's most interesting moments during the download phase and sell them on the black market. Suddenly, Bancroft and his wife Miriam appear, wanting to personally oversee the investigation. Takeshi tries to piece together the events leading up to the incident. It turns out that Bancroft had just returned from a business trip to Osaka, where he had closed a major deal, and after his visit to Psychosec, he didn't spend the night at home. Bancroft insists he remembers nothing, but Takeshi suspects he's hiding something. Takeshi then demands that Prescott provide him with videos of all interrogations of the suspects and any threats Bancroft had received. As they leave Psychosec, Takeshi and Prescott unexpectedly run into Kristen. Takeshi asks if there are any leads on the previous night's attack at the hotel, but Kristen claims that finding the truth is difficult without any surviving witnesses.
Try not to get yourself killed.
Shouldn't be a problem. Want to kill me?
Back at the police station, Kristen is forced to deal with Mrs. Henchy, the mother of Mary Lou, the girl who was thrown into the bay. Mrs. Henchy begs Kristen to return her daughter's body, explaining that Mary Lou recently converted to Neo-Catholicism, which means she can never be brought back to life, even if her stack is intact. Meanwhile, Takeshi receives thousands of videos containing threats against Bancroft. With the help of an AI, he sorts them by the type of threat and identifies the criminals most likely to follow through on them. Takeshi soon comes across a video of a man holding a rifle, vowing to avenge his daughter, Lizzie. He notices the rifle's serial number, which leads him to Vernon Elliott, a former soldier living alone in a rough neighborhood. When Takeshi arrives, he quickly disarms Vernon, ties him up, and starts interrogating him. Vernon reveals that his wife, Ava, was a hacker and is currently serving a 30-year sentence in cryosleep. Suddenly, Takeshi discovers a room with a strange device. When he connects to it, he finds himself in a virtual reality where he sees Lizzie, who was killed outside a brothel. Takeshi is puzzled as to why Vernon uploaded Lizzie's stack into the virtual world, forcing her to relive the worst moments of her life over and over again. Vernon explains that it's the only way he can see his daughter. Vernon is convinced that Bancroft, who frequented the brothel and promised to look after Lizzie, is somehow responsible for her death. Suddenly, Vernon tries to break free and attack Takeshi, but Takeshi overpowers him. Despite Vernon's motive, Takeshi realizes he isn't involved in Bancroft's case. Takeshi then goes on a tour commemorating the Protectorate's victory over the Envoy terrorists, and he looks regretfully at images of Quellcrist.
Waged after the battlefield killing is done, to murder the memory of the defeated.
In the evening, Kristen returns home to find her mother, Alatsna, who has come to visit. During dinner, they discuss Kristen's decision to remove her religious coding. Alatsna is opposed to the idea of Kristen being revived in another body and worries that it might harm her soul. However, Kristen believes that being able to stay connected with loved ones even after their bodies are destroyed is a wonderful idea. They fail to change each other's minds, and just then, Kristen receives new information about Takeshi's whereabouts. She immediately rushes out to find him. Meanwhile, Takeshi visits the brothel where Lizzie worked. He asks one of the prostitutes, Alice, what she knows about Lizzie, but Alice, scared, dismisses him, thinking he's a police officer. To get any information, Takeshi tells Alice that he is Ava, Lizzie's mother, placed into a male body. Alice believes him and reveals that Lizzie had a regular client who was a mafia boss, referring to Bancroft. She assures him that Bancroft treated Lizzie and the other girls well, and if he ever accidentally caused harm, he would buy them upgraded bodies. Alice promises to ask her colleagues about Lizzie and tells Takeshi to come back the next day. As Takeshi leaves the brothel, Vernon confronts him, demanding to know why he's interested in Lizzie's case. Suddenly, a new gang of mercenaries shows up, trying to kill Takeshi. Fortunately, he manages to deal with them, and a few minutes later, Kristen arrives to pick him up. She takes Takeshi to the station, while Vernon escapes unnoticed. Kristen wants to keep Takeshi in a cell overnight to ensure he doesn't harm himself or others, but soon Prescott, the lawyer, arrives and demands his release. Takeshi returns to his room at the Raven, where Miriam Bancroft is waiting for him. She starts flirting with him and reveals that her body emits a special pheromone that no one can resist. Takeshi, unable to resist, spends the night with Miriam. Meanwhile, Kristen goes to the morgue and retrieves Mary Lou's stack against orders, then confesses her sins. Would you want to preserve your consciousness and be endlessly reborn in new bodies? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.